Hi and hello watch fans and welcome back to Geneva Watch Days 2025. We're recording from the glass igloo outside the pavilion on the last day of the fair. We are joined by Praneeth Rajsingh of MING, one of our favourite brands, and unfortunately Alan's not here because he ceded the host's chair to this interloper that you might have already seen this morning if you've been watching, Josh Shapiro, our new host.
Well, I'm just such a huge fan of Ming watches. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to take the other side of things and ask Praneeth some fantastic, hopefully intelligent questions.
Well, you're the man that's going to ask intelligent questions because you guys have worked together very, very closely over the last couple of years. So, Praneeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
I think this is Josh's excuse to torture me on a public stage.
Quite
All
possibly.
That make is
I mean, this is live, so anything could happen. We've got colleagues, friends, and two amazing figures in the watch industry talking to each other. Josh, why don't you start from the top and take us in any direction you desire?
Yeah, so one of the things I respect about Ming and the company as a whole is that everyone has different talents they bring to it. So Ming is extremely creative, but Praneeth takes things from that creativity to reality. And I'm just curious what that process is like with all the incredible ideas that you guys have. How do you take them and make them reality?
Well, I think the process is, there isn't any one process. The best analogy I have for that, sometimes I'll talk to, it's like using math. Sometimes I'll be talking to Ming. I don't know where it'll be like 10. What do you mean by 10? It's like you take 2 and you multiply it 5 times, you get 10. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's like, and then there's taking that and figuring out how to explain multiplication to someone else. I'm like oversimplifying this obviously, but explain multiplication to somebody else and breaking it down into smaller components. I think that's one step, but that is, is production planning 101 and development 101, I guess.
Kind of distill his ideas.
The bit I think that I really bring to the table is I'm a perpetual pessimist and cynic. So we'll start a project. I mean, we can do this in 6 months. I'll be like 18 months. I'll be like, why? I'm like, I don't know. Ask me in 18 months. And usually we'll be right around the mark where I said we'd end up. And I realize it's one of the reasons is because Ming is one of those people who's so full of ideas. And he's always been at least for over a decade now, working for himself or by himself. And so his concept of days of the week and public holidays are sort of as non-existent as mine.
Right.
So even at the fair, he was looking for me yesterday, and he's like, we need to reach out to the supplier. We get this answer. They haven't got back to us. And when it's Saturdays. Nobody's at work. And so I think when he thinks about how development happens, he's like, this will take 2 days and I'll take 3 days. Yes, but you've forgotten that summer is around the corner and Christmas is around the corner.
Where the people sleep.
They fall ill. And I think that's, it's basically translating that vision and that excitement into just, I don't want to say putting the brakes on there, but acting as a buffer and being like, hey, we're all excited about this, but let's be a bit more reasonable about how long this is going to take, how much it's going to cost. And I think one of the more difficult parts of what I do and what I do with Ming is the few times I have to come in and be like, I know you're not 100% happy with this, but we got to get a move on.
Right.
Because we're running at the end of the day, a commercial business that has to be, it's not profits first, but there still have to be profits enough to sort of pay your salaries, rent, right? And there have been conversations we've had where I'm like, we need to launch. Right? We can't spend another 6 months fine-tuning the last 0.5%.
I find it very interesting because you are, to me, the calm within the storm. Always, you just never seem to be bothered by anything. I'm sure there's a lot going on underneath the surface, but you present this preternatural serenity, which I think is so valuable when you're working with someone of such a high intensity on the creative front. Because Ming is obviously well-known industry legend now because of the work you've done together over the last almost a decade now. Isn't it? How long is it that Ming's been around?
8 years now.
Wow.
I knew publicly and behind the scenes a couple more years. So yeah.
And it's a huge endeavor. It's a huge effort. You've pushed boundaries in many directions, actually. So this is something I'd like to ask you about. You launched with an accessible but intriguing prospect.
Right.
And then you went with your special cave projects, and you've done things that are 5 figures and 4 figures and 5 figures and 4 figures. You've bounced between price points that most brands would not be able to sustain simultaneously. That to me is a masterpiece of communication, how you've managed to do that. Because we have this conversation at the brands I work with, they're mostly entry-level brands and like, oh, we want to step up, we want to go to like 30K. And I'm like, normally that's death for a brand. You can't do that. How did you do it? How did you like figure out the story, the way to tell it? How did you position Ming as a brand that is not maybe a brand, but more of an idea? I don't know. How was it?
Outside normal boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean, I apologize for the anticlimactic answer in advance, but you said with integrated communication, I would actually disagree.
Okay.
I think Ming and I, we talk about this all the time. I'm like, there's 2 things we suck at: communication, marketing, and selling.
Selling?
Yeah.
Really?
I think about it.
I'm very humble.
And here's what I mean by that, right? I think what's gotten us this far is just that the ideas and the product itself and how much we've been willing to put into the product has outstripped the need to really be good at communicating or selling.
It's very interesting.
So even with price points, I think we always approach it as, and maybe to some degree Josh is right, where we sell ourselves short in that we look at a watch and we say, oh, this needs to have more for that price point. And it's proven a challenge commercially because we definitely are retail partners now. And to some degree, Josh, because we've done a few projects together, so he's got a bit of a view on the behind the scenes economics. Have realized that we're not joking when we say we have terrible margins. And the sort of quasi joke within the company was we only survived because we outsourced management to Asia in the early days. Because Ming and I lived in Malaysia when all of this started. We could run our lives on much lower payroll, if you will. And that's really what helped the brand survive in the early days. And that allowed us to invest a lot more into doing stuff with Sapphire, R&D. So Josh. Oh, no. And all of that. And I think that's what collectors saw. And they were like, how is a brand putting all of this out? Combined with Ming's singular design vision. I mean, materials are one thing, but how you take that and translate it into what the final product looks like. I think that's really important. I'd say that's been our biggest strength and potentially a double-edged sword is if you don't like Ming's design language or what Ming designs, you'll probably never be one of our collectors or customers. Right? Yeah.
I'd say you guys, you say you're not great salesmen or not great communicators, but in this industry, nothing sells better or speaks more loudly than a great product.
Right.
And your products really speak for themselves. You look at it and you instantly know it's a Ming, and you are excited to see what special thing did they put into this watch. How is it going to amaze me? They showed me something that I can't talk about in any shape, way, or form with you guys, but I was floored. I was absolutely floored. And a company that can get that excitement out of another watchmaker.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. And it's a joy to work with them. And it's a joy to experience their watches as a friend and as a collector.
I don't want to contradict you, Praneeth, because you've got the data behind the scenes, so but from my perspective, I'm a coverer and a customer. So I've written about Ming a lot, and I own a Ming GMT. And selling, I've always struggled to get my hands on one of your pieces because they always seem to sell out. So I would say there's 1 or 2 releases that haven't sold out immediately, but for the most part, I see these products going. Communication-wise, I see it that, okay, I'm sure you're a perfectionist. You have ideas of how it should be communicated, how you could have done better, or how you could innovate in different ways in the future. But there's something about the way that you communicate that matches the product. It matches this kind of secret nature of it. It's still, Ming is well known. Right. It feels like the best kept secret in watchmaking, but it's not a secret. It's almost like it's one of the most mainstream visible independents because you've led from the front. And I think that that's a success because, yeah, okay, your communication might not be as like militant as you would like it to be, or not be as regimented or as replicable as you would want it to be, because it causes a huge amount of stress for you to not be communicating as well as you'd like to. But the message gets through, it cuts through. And like we as collectors and as writers, we see the product and we have enough from you. I don't feel there's a dearth of communication. I won't blame you, but like Grand Seiko, if Grand Seiko's watching, sort your press releases out, call me. But seriously, like there are brands that are terrible at communication. And this is maybe the thing. You're in Ming, right? So you see Ming more than any other brand. Obviously, you've worked with Josh, you've worked with other brands, and you know like bits and bobs in the vicinity. But I get every press release from every brand in the industry. Trust me, you're doing a good job. Better than you might think.
Well, I mean, first off, thank you very much. I think at the risk of maybe self-promoting, I think the bit that probably we've been good at is being authentic.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know how to dress a watch up in any other way. There have genuinely been watches where we're like writing a press release and we're like, we need to like squeeze out a story that sounds cool. And in the end, we're like, we don't have one. Mm-hmm. The story is just that we thought the idea was cool and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes you just
People appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think that's what's worked really in our favor. And even with the sales, I think this is back to the community being open to supporting new ideas, new people on the scene. And I don't think that's actively selling. So maybe where the disconnect in what we're talking about is the people who supported us, 8 years in, it's what, 8,000 customers, many, many more thousand sort of coming to events, social media, all of that. I think of them as like this tight-knit watch community that lives and breathes watches, right? Then all the private WhatsApp chats, they have all the, previously used to be Watchville. Now there's other apps where you can get your news. You're on all the podcasts. That probably listen to this right now. I think with that community, we don't feel the need to sell or market, right? We just feel like we could be ourselves. But to build a brand that sort of, I think at this point we have a brand that has outgrown Ming, the founder, and the co-founding team. And to make one that's sustainable, I think we need to bring new people into the fold, get people excited about watches, whether they're collecting sort of mainstream stuff, get them excited about independent watchmaking, or if they never collect watches, to bring them into watchmaking and be like, this can be fun and cool. And when I say we suck at sales and marketing and communication, I think it's to these people, right? How do you make watches fun for them? And that's the one thing I'd say when Hodinkee first started out in the early 2010s, I think that's where they really got their traction and shot to fame is Ben Fan and Stephen Pulverint in the early days just made watches a lot more fun and accessible. Yeah. I remember being in like high school or university back then and going to a teacher and being like, I don't have to feel like I need to have all the answers to understand this. And I can sort of dip my toes in and bring people in. And I think that's what, looking to the future, that's one of the things we've been trying to do in the last year or so. And that's probably where this view of not being great at communicating comes in.
I mean, it's very refreshing that you're so self-reflective and you think about these things, like, because, we wouldn't say, I wouldn't sit here and say, oh, you need to do something different. But it's great that you're thinking forward and you're thinking, how can we like recapture that spirit of the early 2010s, the late aughts, where people were being brought into watches in a way that they never had been before. Because we make this mistake in watchmaking all the time. Watchmaking as a craft is 300 years old. Our industry started in 1983, post-quartz crisis. Prior to the quartz crisis, or the revolution, as I prefer to call it, to be honest, watches weren't collectible. Watches could be a status symbol. You'd buy a nice Rolex when you'd worked a long time at a job, or you get given one when you retired. But nobody collected until Swatch. Swatch reframed everything with the second watch concept. And throughout the 80s, there was a lot of like pop-up fashion brands, and we started working in seasons. That never happened before. Early like fashion houses that were adopting the Swatch model really created the environment in which we exist now. So we have Watches and Wonders, we have Geneva Watch Days, we have Dubai Watch Week. We work on basically like a 3-month through to 6-month rotation. That's very, very new. The 90s, watches exploded in size and in extravagance and bombast. And they became maybe a bit of too much of a status symbol. This idea, like Ming couldn't have existed in the 80s or the 90s, or even the aughts. It was really like this conflation of the industry, this contraction and this appreciation of craft, and the distinction between a timepiece and a work of art.
Right.
And I think you've managed to capture that imagination very, very well with what you're doing and with the disparate but like wholly authentic nature of everything you've pursued. I think, to be honest, it's a rare thing in this industry. But what you're saying about trying to reach an audience outside of those collectors is not that rare. There are several brands, not not many, but there are several, even a couple I've spoken to throughout this fair that have said exactly the same thing. Like, we're great at communicating with collectors. The collectors get us. You know, like, you don't need to send a press release. You send an image and they're there. Yeah. But how do you tap into that wider audience? Because we were all very conscious of the fact that, like, the generation that grew up with watch collecting as a hobby, we're getting a bit old now. And we're not going to be around in, well, you'll be around in 20 years. I may be not. But, you know, we have to be aware of, like, what do the new people want? And how do we get the new people into the industry in a world where timepieces are alien objects? You know how often I meet people in the pub and I say to them, I'm a watchmaker. And they go, wow, don't robots make watches? And I'm like, no. This is a different kind of
thing. I think not what's a watch.
Yeah, right. So you're not on your own in that regard. It's a very good question, though. How do you branch out? Do you collaborate with brands that are tangential? Like, Moe's has done a good job recently with their F1 collaborations and, you know, creating watches that, you know, put the watch in front of a new audience that has probably money, interest in technical stuff, interest in design, but maybe had never really thought about owning a luxury watch. What are your plans to crack that? Are you going to do exactly the same thing or something slightly more artistic, perhaps?
Well, lots of fact there. I think the first thing with we're trying to reach a wider audience. Part of that is part of it is generational and trying to bring in new people, but part of it is also recognizing that I've not been collecting watches for that long, but even in this small space of time, the decade that I've been seriously into watches, I've seen this shift from what was considered normal when I started was like you got one really nice watch a year.
Yeah.
Right. And prior to that, it was probably like what you saved up on every couple of years. And for better or worse, let's not get into the benefits or drawbacks of capitalism, but like we live in a world where for each brand, even for us to continue doing what we're doing, you know, we have to have, you know, this year we had 10 releases and next year we'll have some sort of a similar number. And you have to have people you have to have homes for those watches, right? Wrists to put them on, but do it in a sustainable way. And I think trying to force more within the same community isn't going to work, because even I sometimes feel like jaded and sort of tired of watches in general. Like when I'm on a vacation, I don't wear a watch anymore.
Right.
Not that I take a vacation very often, but when I do, I can't wear a watch because sometimes I just want to break from them. But when I come back, I'm excited again, right? But you need to give people the space and time to sort of walk away, live with what they have, sort of digest that, and come back and be excited. And I think what happened over the pandemic, is over the pandemic, the industry moved to a place where we were all trying to sell multiple watches in a year to the same people. And that doesn't create the right factors for anyone to have a good experience, no matter how good the watches are. You can make the best watch in the world and you could genuinely be fantastic, but you get jaded. And I think bringing more people into the fold means you also allow the industry to, at least, if not grow, at least stay where it is sustainably. One of the ways for us to do it really is not so much aspirational collabs as much as I think bring people in on either the design merit or the technical merit. Right. There's some people who just find it cool that you can have something that is not electrical at all, electronic at all. My sister's like Gen Z. Like she has friends, she's in university now, and she has friends who are getting into watches. They're 21, 22. Yeah. And they just find the fact that you could do all this mechanically super fascinating. Right. And then it's like, how do you make the technical stuff not so
obscure,
intimidating?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to throw words like tourbillon and remontoire and escapement and whatever else, right? And I think a lot of watch media these days, at least in the community we're in, we tend to jump into the deep end very, very quickly. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with that, you can get very, very intimidated.
I think one of the most special things about your watches, which ties into that, is you guys have a sense of adventure. So when you're working with suppliers or other people, whoever it is, that same sense of adventure that comes out in the design comes out in who you're willing to work with. And the other aspect is this idea of magic, that your watches, when you look at it, has this almost magical effect. Like, what is this watch going to do this time? Like, how do they do that? How do they accomplish that? And the sense of like wonder that comes at looking at the watches. And that's like a consistent theme along with your design, is the sense of wonder and magic that comes into every single timepiece.
And I think one of the things we would like to do more of that is the only way to experience that is in person.
Yeah.
And Ming's photographer is a great photographer, but nothing he can do will get the pictures to look as good as the real thing in the metal in great light.
Yeah.
And that's why this year, for instance, we started working with retail partners. We're doing way more events. We're expanding the team so people can just play with the watches, because I think that gets you excited more than anything else.
Get them out in front of people.
Exactly.
We're talking a bit about collaboration here, and of course you two are two parts of a trio that recently did something that I'd been longing for a long time, until very recently, and you were one of the originators of this concept. Brands have been reluctant to collaborate with one another. We've seen one-off pieces, maybe at Only Watch a couple of times, and it was joyful. It was fascinating for us as observers of the industry to see brands put aside their egos and to acknowledge the fact that we are speaking to a very small audience worldwide. When you actually run the numbers of how many people buy luxury watches, you realize that each one of those people must have 5 or 6 timepieces on average, like from extremely high-level brands. You decided to work together. Tell us about that project, what it was like, why you thought it was a good idea, and what the reception was like from journalists and consumers alike.
Should we talk about we have a few projects.
Let's talk about the bracelet to start with, okay?
So the bracelet was really, can we do something that we can all utilize?
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that was that it kind of pivoted into the Project 21, making these cases together. So the bracelet was like, can we do this? And Project 21 was like the reality of it, where I made a tantalum case to go with their fantastic watch, which is up for GPHD, which is...
Congratulations. Yeah, wonderful.
Thanks for making it happen. I think coming back to bracelet for a second, it's interesting to bring that up. It's a project that, to me at least, is nowhere near the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
We announced it, we shot a prototype, we took a few orders, but we paused orders and got back to the customers who placed orders and said, hey, this is going to take a bit longer for good reason.
Yep.
And the good reason is, Josh and I were talking one day, and Josh said, listen, we're doing it at a certain price point, which is high, right, for a bracelet. And he's like, to be blunt, in terms of opportunity cost for what I have to do with Resurgence and everything else with watchmaking, it's not really the best use of my time, but it also doesn't feel like we're delivering the best value possible to our customers and community collectively. Is there something we can do about this? And, continue to talk about it, but like a bracelet really is not an art. The engineering of a bracelet is quite complex, but in terms of the finishing or whatever else, it's not really an artisanal component, right?
Yep.
Nobody's doing interior angles and anglage, everything else. And so I said, Josh, would you be willing to work with our production partner for our, like the Bluefin case and most of our entry-level pieces who are out of Asia? So would you be willing to work with them and share some of your know-how around bracelets and tantalum? And would you be willing to help them develop this knowledge? So then we can make bracelets that are far more scalable in production, bring that price point down, maybe even by 50% of what you originally announced.
Okay.
To be determined.
Wow.
And then free up your time to focus on advancing American-made watchmaking or making in-house movements, the stuff that you really need to spend time on.
Praneeth is very good. You say you're a pessimist, you're a realist. He's good at taking crazy ideas, even when I have them, and turning them into reality.
And I think the big barrier we had to overcome internally was like, how would people feel about a tantalum bracelet made in Asia? Because originally we announced that Josh was going to make it. And I feel like if we communicate that well, and if the savings are very apparent and to be blocked the price, the community will appreciate it because it's meant to be a universal bracelet, which means, there's a fair number of tantalum watches. And I think that's only going to go up over time. It's great to have bracelet options.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so rare that brands collaborate on a component like that. And I think one thing that is lost, you talk about the costs, research and development. It's enormous. It's a drain, and the amount of failures that we all experience behind the scenes that are reflected in the price that we charge for our watches is something that, you need good communication to explain and express that and to not alienate your base. But sharing that research and development for the common good, for the benefit of the customer is it's wonderfully responsible, considerate and progressive. And on that note, I think we have to end this interview. Josh, your debut was stellar. You're welcome back anytime. Praneeth, always a fascinating talk. I love talking to you. We have to get you back on the show again for a longer interview because there's so much going on at Ming with all those releases.
The weather's a bit cooler.
Yeah, we'll do it in an ice bath next time. All right. So
It's always a pleasure talking with friends.
it always is, and that's what we're here for at Geneva Watch Days 2025. Join us again very soon.